There were four stud quarterbacks at the top of fantasy drafts this year. We all know the names: Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes. We have to pay a premium price to get those guys. Is it worth it? Perhaps, but we have to consider the opportunity cost. There is still elite talent on the board at running back, wide receiver, and tight end in the rounds that those quarterbacks are being drafted. There's a significant edge to be had by waiting just a little bit longer to snag your quarterback, especially if that quarterback can still score as a top 5 asset at the position. I've mined through the ADP data to identify 6 quarterbacks who are worth drafting in 2024. So if you're like me and aren't thrilled about using a top 50 pick on a quarterback, draft one of these guys instead and thank me later. Kyler Murray might be the most underrated quarterback in all of fantasy football. He's incredibly consistent year over year, and now he's a full year removed from the ACL injury that cost him the end of the 2022 season and the beginning of the 2023 season. And even coming off the injury, Murray performed well down the stretch. He scored as a top 12 quarterback 5 times, completing 66% of his passes, and he ranked top 10 among quarterbacks in fantasy points per dropback. And Murray's legs looked healthy too. He ran 5 or more times in 7 of 8 games, and he totaled 244 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. He had the offense rolling too, averaging 22.4 points per game in his 8 starts. And if we extrapolate that out for a full season, that would have slotted between the Texans at 22.7 and the Chiefs at 22.2. And we forget how good Kyler Murray has been in fantasy football during his career. It didn't always look pretty in the dreadful Cliff Kingsbury offense, but Murray seemed to always get there for fantasy purposes. In his career, Kyler Murray has scored as the QB 11, which was his rookie season, the QB 3, the QB 4, and the QB 7. And then upon his return from the ACL injury, he was QB 9 in fantasy points per game. And even with the injury recovery aside, Kyler Murray was still playing in a brand new offense that he had never practiced in prior to his return. I mean, he was rehabbing during the offseason installs and training camp, but now Kyler Murray has a full offseason and preseason and training camp to work with his teammates and the coaches. He will also get to enjoy some new weapons and a bolstered offensive line. Rookie wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a major difference maker on top of last year's breakout tight end, Trey McBride. Kyler Murray could break fantasy football in 2024. He has legitimate QB1 overall upside. He's got his health, he's got great weapons, an improved offensive line, and a bad defense on the other side that's going to keep him throwing and running. And that Konami code factor could have him scoring among the elite quarterbacks in fantasy football. Yet you can get him at a multi-round discount compared to Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Patrick Mahomes. Even Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, and Joe Burrow are going ahead of him in drafts. Kyler Murray will be one of my most drafted quarterbacks in 2024. I urge you to follow suit. Anthony Richardson's rookie season seemed to end about as fast as it began. But man, was he electric when he was on the field. He started 4 games, but he only made it through 2 of them healthy. But in those 2 games, though, he averaged more than 25 fantasy points, and he scored as the QB2 and the QB4. A lot of that was due to his legs. He ran for 136 yards, and he scored a rushing touchdown in 3 of his 4 starts. It was an extremely small sample, but Anthony Richardson ranked number 5 among quarterbacks in rush attempts per game and number 3 in red zone carries per game. And that all culminated in 0.81 fantasy points per dropback, which would have ranked number 1 among all quarterbacks. Now healthy heading into the 2024 season, Anthony Richardson holds as much upside as any quarterback in fantasy football. He will pair his incredible rushing ability with improved weaponry around him. Remember, Anthony Richardson only played about half a game with Jonathan Taylor on the backfield last year. It's going to be a ton of fun to see those 2 pair up for a lethal rushing attack. The team also brought back Michael Pittman, who had a breakout campaign in 2023, and they added Adonai Mitchell in the second round of the draft, and are returning Josh Downs for a second season after he had a nice first year. That sets up the Colts as potentially one of the best offenses in the NFL. Led by rookie head coach Shane Steichen last year, the Colts offense impressed even with Gardner Minshew under center. And Richardson's skill set compared to Minshew's opens up so many more opportunities down the field, in the red zone, and in the run game. And Richardson will also benefit from the fast pace of Shane Steichen's play calling. In fact, the Colts were top 3 in pace of play in 2023. The faster an offense plays, the more plays they run, and there are more opportunities to score fantasy points. There is no reason why a healthy Anthony Richardson can't be a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football. He has the skill set, the supporting cast, and an offensive play caller putting him in position to succeed. He's going to challenge the likes of Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Patrick Mahomes to be the top scoring quarterback in all of fantasy football. And yet you can draft him multiple rounds after those guys come off the board. Anthony Richardson is the league-winning quarterback of 2024. There is no better way to get ready for fantasy football drafts than building your own projections. But maybe you don't know how to make your own projections, or the task of setting them up has stopped you from doing them. But that's not an excuse anymore. At yardsperfantasy.com, we have the world's greatest projections template. It is fully customizable for any scoring settings and loaded with features for the most experienced projections builders. But at the same time, it's so easy to use and comes with a complete guide and video tutorial that even first-time users find it a breeze to make their own projections. It's completely preloaded so you can start right away, and you have the power to make it as simple or as complex as you'd like. So check out our projections template. It's less than $10 and it's available now at yardsperfantasy.com. Building projections has never been this easy. Dak Prescott continues to be one of the most underrated quarterbacks in fantasy football. He's been a QB1 in fantasy points per game in 5 of his 7 seasons, plus a QB13 finish. And that includes QB4 in fantasy points per game in 2023. And yet he is oftentimes being drafted outside the top 10 quarterbacks. I mean, he's coming off an incredible season where he's number 3 in passing yards, number 7 in yards per attempt, number 2 in true passer rating, and 2nd in EPA. And that's all according to playerprofiler.com. And if the efficiency numbers weren't impressive enough, how about the volume? He did all of that with the 4th most pass attempts in the NFL. And the offense was especially reliant on Prescott in the red zone. He led all quarterbacks in red zone pass attempts, which helped fuel his league-leading 36 passing touchdowns. And that volume is going to undoubtedly remain high in 2024 as the Cowboys continue to lean on their franchise quarterback. I mean, the running back room in Dallas is about as weak as it gets in the NFL. Tony Pollard is gone, and it's looking like it's going to be the Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle show. That's not exactly the formula for a run-heavy offense. That's only going to play into Dak's favor as he's once again going to be near the top of the league in all volume-based metrics again in 2024. And if he continues to be efficient as well, he's going to have another top 5 season. Dak Prescott is a great excuse to pass on those early quarterbacks. Rookie Jayden Daniels is expected to start right away for the Commanders. He's coming off a Heisman Trophy winning season after throwing for nearly 4,000 yards and scoring 50 total touchdowns at LSU. And he also ran for over 1,100 yards. He has the arm to make all the throws, and his legs give him about as high a ceiling as anyone in fantasy football. Jayden Daniels will enjoy quality weaponry with Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, and Brian Robinson. And while he's adapting to the NFL game, he's going to rely on his legs a ton. That immediately gives him a high floor. So even if he experiences some rookie growing pains, he's still going to be a quality fantasy asset. And if he hits as a passer, the sky's the limit. That's why I'm drafting him so aggressively right now. Even if he has just baseline passing number, he's probably still a safe bet to be a top 12 quarterback by default, thanks to the rushing. And if we tweak up those passing numbers just to above average, we have a league-winning quarterback. We could be looking at an RG3-like rookie season from Jayden Daniels. Brock Purdy was the QB6 in fantasy points per game in 2023, but you're drafting him as the QB13 in 2024. It doesn't make any sense. He still has a bunch of weapons: Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, and they just used a first-round pick on another wide receiver. He may not get there on volume, but he's incredibly efficient, and he lets his guys eat up a ton of yards after the catch. In 2023, Brock Purdy led all quarterbacks in yards per attempt, passer rating, and EPA. And many think of him as a game manager, and he's a damn good one, but he can make plays down the field with his arm as well. In fact, Brock Purdy was number 1 in deep ball completion rate and top 10 in air yards per attempt per playerprofiler.com. And Purdy, with a little help from his friends, did an incredible job keeping the 49ers offense moving and in position to score points. And that resulted in top 10 in red zone attempts, which turned into top 3 in passing touchdowns. I could keep spitting numbers at you, but the point is Brock Purdy is a fantastic quarterback. He's efficient, he makes plays, and he scores fantasy points. If you're going to take a pocket passer in fantasy football drafts, Brock Purdy should be the guy. Volume. Volume, volume, volume. Matthew Stafford may end up top 5 in pass attempts per game in 2024. And why not? He has a healthy Cooper Kupp. He has super stud Puka Nacua, and has one of the NFL's worst defenses on the other side, which will force the offense to be pedal to the metal for 60 minutes every week. Remember, Aaron Donald is no longer on that defense. Opposing offenses are going to find it much easier to move the ball up and down the field on the Rams than in years past. That's going to keep the sense of urgency up on the offense and force Sean McVay to lean more on his quarterback to win games. And that's great news for us as fantasy gamers, as a more aggressive offense means more fantasy points for everyone. So if you're drafting a quarterback late or you need a QB2 in a superflex format, Matthew Stafford feels like a safe bet to outperform his QB19 ADP.